And
Here we are.
Here we are. Just overdriving the mic. No,
Perfect.
We finally made it. We've seen all the production part,
Yep.
which is kind of post your ideas.
Yes.
Now we travel back in time and start at somewhere around t minus 5 years, when the ideas start to grow, when the madness comes in.
Yes.
And you told me the main ideas for you pick up from observing other people.
Yeah. So in our case, what I've always been fascinated with is the way that people play music.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's the musician first. It's a love of them playing music. And what we want to do as Taylor Guitars is contribute to that activity, can make that more pleasant, make it a better experience for the musician.
Okay.
And so what that translates to is watching what somebody does and wanting to make improvements on their guitar so that they either have new creative directions to go or eliminate some problem that they're experiencing.
So the best person for you to observe is somebody like me who does a lot of mistakes?
No, hardly. A lot of it comes from watching my own playing initially.
Okay.
Like I'll play and go, I always stumble over this, or I wish I could.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of it for me is a direct experience. Sometimes it comes from other players, maybe different artists that we work with, or watching somebody play in a restaurant or in a club or at a stadium or anything in between.
Okay.
And so we're exposed to a lot of music. I listen to a lot of music, listen to recordings, listen to the radio, all these different places. And you can tell what musicians are trying to do with their instruments.
After you're cured one of the mistakes or the problems, how much time do you need to readopt? Not because normally if there's a kind of something hard in the guitar to be played, you kind of adopt your playing style.
Yeah,
A good friend of mine, he had worn out frets in one place, and he said, well, it helps me because I develop other places on the fretboard and I have a complete new signature sound because I can't go to that one. Which is a bit extreme.
I imagine there's a benefit there, but that's not really that's not the state that I want musicians to be living in.
Right.
I want them to feel fewer obstacles, is
right.
the approach that I take. Obstacles sometimes they can be turned into creative directions, but oftentimes it feels more like an inhibition.
Yeah.
And so usually what I'll do is I'll start mixing ideas and go, what would happen or if I compare this idea with that idea, it turned into this guitar or that guitar. Let me create something new and see what creative direction that can make for us.
Yeah.
So I'll build that guitar either here in my prototyping shop or in the prototyping shop I built behind my house.
Yeah.
It's kind of for the midnight ideas. And I'll build the instrument and see how it works. I'll play it, I'll listen to it, I'll think about it.
Yeah.
And I'll build another one, maybe a third one. And I start exposing it to different artists, see what they think, whether it works for them or what they find out, what they don't like, what they do like, and see if it's doing for them what it did for me.
Okay.
And then I might start translating that design into a language that other machinists and engineers can speak. Because there's a big difference between me building one guitar by hand and our ability to make 1,000 of that guitar and have every one of them be a good one.
Be a good one, right. So we left like the main idea, so there's a problem that can be cured with a good idea that I had. Was like 5 years ago. Now you build one for yourself with the limited time that you have, so that takes a while as well. You're now 4 years away from the NAMM show it's going to be released.
Yeah.
When the paperwork that you made, and obviously that's a good thing to document what you do before you have to tear it apart again and have different measurements.
Yeah, so I make a lot of drawings, take a lot of measurements, I'll trace parts. Very analog. It's a very analog process.
Yeah.
And then I'll start making some initial geometry on a computer and translating maybe the measurements I took and the drawings I made into a computerized version.
Right.
And we have an amazing team of engineers here that I work very closely with, and we start translating that into like a modern, like a three-dimensional computer model.
Yeah.
Well, okay, let's study this, let's analyze this. How are we going to actually build this thing?
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll sit down with, a number of times, but I'll sit down with our entire team of engineers and machinists and go part by part for that design.
Mm-hmm.
How are we going to actually create this guitar in a production setting?
Yeah.
What's the process? So I'll go over a process that might be, well, I got my saw out and I cut this piece of wood and I bent it on that hot pipe and I glued it in place here, and then I shaved this off.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, how can we duplicate that exact process? Can we improve it? Can we make it better? Can we make it more efficient?
Because that's something you said earlier. One of the main parts of that process is eliminate the mistake that can happen.
Exactly. You want to eliminate inaccuracies or the mistakes that might creep in. So I'm not going to teach somebody to bend a set of sides over a hot pipe.
Yeah.
Because I can do it once, I can do it twice. I've had a lot of practice at it. But there's no way that I could expect somebody to do it 1,000 times in a row and have exactly the result that we want every single time.
And that must not be somebody, it could be you as well. Because
Absolutely.
you on a different day would be a different bend.
It's like by the time I get to the 10th one, man, I'm tired.
Yeah.
I might not do quite as good a job as I did on the first one or the second one.
Yeah.
So we want to design a process that allows that particular instrument to be built consistently well.
Right.
So then we'll sit down and we kind of formalize all of the blueprints, the drawings, a computer model, and then we start designing tools. We start designing all the tools that you might need to build that design. Because a lot of our processes rely on custom-made tooling
Yeah.
not just for that guitar. You don't think of it as a guitar at that stage. It's a collection of parts.
Yeah.
You're making tools to create every single part for that guitar. Then you're creating tools for every single assembly of that guitar.
Yeah.
How do you locate the parts together? How do you make sure that the glue was spread correctly? How do you make sure that the parts all come together with the exact relationship you want between them?
How do you align the timing of building stuff
Exactly.
so that it arrives at the joining point at the same
just
time,
the right time.
with the same amount of pre-time it needs to kind of dry
Season, move
after the
acclimate.
last big cut and stuff like that.
Exactly. The whole process has to be designed with intention. Then usually we'll go even down to what you'd call a workstation or the working environment. How do you design the environment that design is produced in?
Okay.
How is the worker's bench laid out? How
Where are his tools?
Yeah, what kind of temperature and humidity does this require? What materials do they need at hand? So everything that goes into building that design is worked through.
Okay.
So something like that, and that's before you ever even get to the point where we have a marketing department, and they're charged with.
I would assume we're now like 2 years into presenting.
Yeah,
Probably.
you're a few years in, depending on how complex the design was, how different it was from what you've already made.
Yeah.
You might be 6 months, you might be a year, you might be 4 years, 3 years, 5 years.
Yeah.
It's hard to know based on how complex the design is. And then you think, well, we've been living with this guitar for years. We understand it. We know what it is.
Yeah.
How do we tell people about it? How do you explain what a musician needs to know about it?
Yeah, you went through one of the more extreme processes with the rebracing just a while ago, where in the first place it looks like less material / less cost. And it actually isn't, because you proved the point to us by just a simple schematic on how precise it has to be at one specific joining point, and you're putting a multiple of tooling and production efforts in it compared to the amount of wood you're saving.
Oh yeah, I mean,
So
I'd say there's a tiny bit less actual wood in there.
Yeah.
It ends up as a stronger guitar because of the design.
Yeah.
But when we first designed it, by now, it's like 6-7 years ago,
Yeah.
we didn't have the ability to make that guitar.
Yeah.
I built it by hand, and we quickly realized there are parts of our production where we're just not ready to make this
Not
guitar.
ready. Yeah.
We need to invest in different machines, different technology, different abilities to raise it to a new level of accuracy
Yeah.
in order to produce what's required for this guitar. That took us a number of years.
Right. And now you have to get the crowd mentally ready for that.
Yeah, so you end up building, kind of completing like the story. You want to explain, what is it? Why does it exist? Because it's easy to tell you what the guitar is. It's a guitar. It's for playing songs.
Yeah.
You know, that's not rocket science.
No.
That's like you pick the guitar up, and if it's fun to play, it's a good guitar.
Yeah. But now I could explain to you why.
Yeah.
Why you have that feel.
Why should you even build it?
Yeah.
That's one of the more complex ideas to get across.
Yeah.
But to me, that's the very important one, because that's why I bother building these guitars in the first place.
That's where you get your energy from.
Yeah, it's the thing that charges you up. You want to know, why should this exist? Why should you even bother? Why put the effort in?
Yeah.
It's not just to fill out a line on some salesman's price list or something. That's not a very good musical reason for a guitar to exist. What you want is to be looking at it from the musician's perspective, and say, what improvement can I make in building this guitar? How can I make somebody's musical experience, even if it's just a little better, that's worthwhile to me.
Yeah. Which then happened to introduce a
That
NAMM
brings
show.
us all the way to this week, where we're introducing
getting
guitars.
ready for NAMM show. A similar project was the Grand Pacific,
Yes.
and I had one for testing, which was really hard to give back to the guys to Fedor.
I'm glad to hear it.
It is a for Taylor guitar, a surprisingly different guitar,
Yeah.
which you mentioned last year as well, because it's it's the chord, it's the whole sonic platform we want to transport instead of individual notes.
Yep.
So
Yeah, one of the things that's really interesting, we've suggested it, we've talked a little bit about it in the last several years, but what the V-Class idea gives us is the ability to deliberately create different kinds of sounds.
Okay.
Because it's very controllable, and with the level of precision that we have now, we can influence how that guitar sounds.
Yeah.
And go, well, if we want to make a classic Taylor sound, that sonic image of a Taylor sound,
Yeah.
we can do that. But if we want to make a different sound, well, we can do some of that too. And so these guitars that we're introducing this week, it's really exciting for me as a guitar maker, because these are every one of them is significantly
Has
different.
an old zip code.
Yeah, it's like it's its own zip code. It's its own image, its own purpose.
Okay.
Each one has a musical purpose
Okay.
and a musical characteristic. It's got a personality. They're like individual people, right?
Yeah.
You listen to the singer sing and you go, you sound like you and nobody else.
Right.
I want guitars to be like that.
Yeah. So all the stuff presented at NAMM, except one, we will present at NAMM.
Yep.
For the little insight of how the idea finally gets into production, and on how you make it, ensure that it is a constant product. Thank you for all that input I had. It's been a very interesting afternoon and chat so far.
It's my pleasure.
We're going to talk about that little extra in a second on a new recording tape.
Great.
So, cheers for the moment, Musiker-Board.
Cheers, bye-bye.
See you next year at NAMM, at Taylor, in the world.